Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to the Asia InsurTech Podcast. We are going to wrap up 2022 in a way similar to the way we wrapped up 2021. Both amazing years. Theresa, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, Michael. How are you?
I cannot wait to go through this. I feel like 2022 was even better than 2021. What do you think?
Yeah, no, agree. It was an awesome year. We had again a ton of amazing speakers on the podcast, and definitely another great year for the Asia InsurTech podcast and for InsurTech in Asia in general.
Yeah, wow, what a year. So what do we need to know? Where do you want to start with this stuff?
Well, I had actually a look. Spotify is always creating this year review, for personal accounts, but also for the podcast account.
All right.
So I had a look at that, and we created close to 2,000 minutes of content. How crazy is that?
Oh my God.
That is, close to 2,000 minutes of you, Michael.
I don't think anybody really wants that. But look what it says. More than 97% of other creators in the business category. This is the thing. Go ahead.
We are producing a lot of content. I mean, episode every Monday plus the news roundup. That is a lot of content.
Yeah, and look, we talked about this when we first started doing it, right? Consistency matters. Everybody wants to have a show, but a lot of people find it really difficult to commit to doing this. And I think we really have 97% more is really, really good. Yeah, this is super cool. Yeah. I did not know that.
No, absolutely. And, we are also in the, top 15% of most shared podcasts globally. Which is also, crazy. I mean, obviously we are one of the biggest and also oldest podcasts focusing on insurance innovation and insurtech, right?
For sure.
These stats are actually all podcasts. That's not only, business category. So we are competing here with, all kinds of podcasts out there. So I think that is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think that we're probably in the top 2 or 3 of the insurance or insurtech related insurance innovation podcasts in the world. It's pretty incredible. And I think what's actually really interesting too, and I wonder how they track this, is that 29% of the shares, so almost the top spot, are on WhatsApp. What does that mean? Because I don't share it on WhatsApp at all. I wonder what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's a convenient way from Spotify. You can just, grab a link and then put it in your WhatsApp contact and, share it. I think what it also means is, people really liking our content and sharing it with, colleagues, peers, etc. So that's good to see and, good for us to hear that people are liking what we are doing.
I love it. Okay. Is there any other information that they've shared as well?
There's one more, and we are actually, in the top 10% of most followed podcasts. Again, globally across all categories, not only business podcasts, but, in general, another very, very impressive number here, I find. And 33% of our listeners are actually also following the podcast. So, they are regulars. And then on top, the ones who are occasionally listening in. Yeah,
I mean, I've got to be honest. When we started the InsurTech podcast back in 2019, it wasn't clear to me that we were going to be in the top 10% of most followed podcasts. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, no, that is really an amazing achievement, and having an amazing podcast host is what really matters. And that's also that's something I also think a lot of people underestimate, how important it is to have someone who is really good at doing that. You mentioned that earlier with consistency, that a lot of people are starting a podcast, and especially during the pandemic, there were so many podcasts coming up, but there's a difference in having an amazing host like you are, and also the consistency, and that's the result we are seeing here.
I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm blushing. Can we switch slides?
We can. So should we have a look at our top 10 episodes of 2022?
Yes.
That's always a bit, difficult to determine, what are the top 10, how do you measure it, right? If we measure it by, total listens over the year, then obviously the ones released in January have an advantage.
Right.
So what I have done is actually always looking at the first week when a podcast came out and just taking, the numbers from the first week after release. So that allows us to, also include the podcast that just came out in November and December. So should we have a look?
I just have no idea. I feel like I'm too involved. Go ahead. Okay, Varun, this makes sense. Go ahead. This is number 10.
Number 10.
Go ahead.
Is Varun Mittal from Sing Life with Aviva. And, the interesting thing is, so these are combined numbers here, right? But if we are just looking at Spotify, Varun was actually the number 1 episode on Spotify. Yeah. But, we are not only publishing on Spotify, we are having the Asia InsurTech Podcast website and also, iTunes, etc. So overall, Varun is number 10, but on Spotify, this episode was actually the number 1.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. I've seen him speak in person. I've spoken with him on panels. He's really, really good.
Yeah, no, I think, it was also a really open and honest conversation. I like these types the best, and really enjoyed it.
What was number 9?
Mohandeep Singh.
Oh my God.
Also based in Singapore, I think. Yeah. Was it Singapore or Malaysia? I'm not sure.
I think he's in Malaysia.
No, also like a really, really good conversation. Yeah. Also, again, quite open and honest. And I think you had a bit of a controversy if, InsurTech will die in the next 10 years. If this happens, what are we doing, Michael?
We'll keep talking about insurance.
Do we have to retire then?
You can. Can I retire? Can you retire? Neither one of us are going to retire. But look, he came up with this really great phrase, right? And it's very catchy. He doesn't believe per se that insurtechs will die. He just believed that they're going to kind of rotate and switch around. But this was a really, really great conversation. And he was an incredible speaker and really charismatic in the way that he presented this, if I remember correctly. This was a great episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's have a look at number 8. So here we have our friend Prem, from Thailand. Yeah, I think you actually recorded that in the in your studio, didn't you?
Yeah, face to face. You could feel the energy there, right? Some of this stuff that gets recorded face to face is actually super good. Prem obviously knows what he's talking about. He's very, what's the right word? He's very determined. He's very methodical, really smart. And also, look at the look on his face. Super happy dude, and just really, really great to work with. Really great to work with. I loved this episode.
Yeah, no, it was a really good conversation, and also a very honest conversation on what it means to actually be a founder, right? And all the challenges and hard decisions you have to make. Yeah.
He's really open. I love talking to him too, because he just tells me the truth and he tells me what he's thinking. I love this.
Oh, very good. Okay, let's have a look at number 7. Alex Liang from 1 Degree. Also, a great episode. We had Alex on the show a couple of times. Huge fan of what the guys are doing at 1 Degree. So really happy to see they came in number 7. And that was actually the first episode we published in 2022.
Was it 149? Oh my gosh. I love looking at these numbers. Yeah. And he's also very giving and very, what's the right word? Generous with his time. Whenever we ask him to come on the show, he comes on the show, and really, really insightful. I love this. In hindsight, everything is planned. We should point out, right, that these titles really come directly out of the mouths of the guests. So this must be something that he said. Really cool.
No, really, really great episode. And I think we, might have 1 Degree on again for our anniversary episode, which is coming up, because we are actually getting really, really close to our 200th episode on the Asia InsurTech podcast, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, what's next?
So let's have a look at number 6. Sanjeev Jha from CoverFox.
This was awesome. This was really awesome. Do you remember this story? So Sanjeev, I believe, was one of the investors in this company. And he was looking, you listen to the story again, very open. The man had a point he wanted to make. I mean, you've listened to this. Plenty of people have listened to this. It's had a lot of listens as well. He was just like, look, I can let this die or I can take it over and make it survive. And he was like, I'm committed to making this thing survive and thrive. And I think he's done that, actually. This was a super cool episode. Super cool.
Yeah, no, I think also was amazing. He took the time to come onto the show. We were trying to get him for quite a while, actually, because, CoverFox is also one of the, earliest insurtech in India. And, as you just mentioned, they had quite a bit of a turnaround in their, business strategy when Sanjeev took over from the original founder,
right.
Varun Dua. So, really, really interesting and a great story.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so number 5 is Sabir Samad from Simbo. I mean, we had Simbo on the show also a number of times, different speakers, and now Sabir Samad, who made it to our number 5. That's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think wasn't Simba one of the earliest episodes we had? I feel like it was in the first year that we did this, if I remember correctly. But again, a company that we follow closely, we continue to talk about it, and I love having them on. One of the things that we should also point out when we do these reviews is that it's great to have the guests on more than one time. I love following up, whether it's 6 months, 8 months, 12 months later. It's always great to see the progression, particularly with the startups. The incumbents move, as we know, a little bit more slowly, but the startups are just going through these massive changes and sometimes different iterations and different pivots. It's great to have them back on again. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's have a look at our number 4. Vipul Sood from Ascensio Software.
Yeah, this was, I don't know, there's so much going on with Azentio, and this comes out of, what was the name of that other company that was acquired by Azentio?
Candela Labs.
Candela Labs, right? This came from through Candela. This was so interesting. Again, all of this stuff from Candela, we had them on a couple of times into the Azentio stuff. This was really interesting. And the stuff that Azentio is building is really cool too, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we should check in with the guys and see if they want to come back onto the show as well.
We'll definitely get them back on again. What's number 3? I'm getting excited now. I cannot even begin to imagine what number 1 is. Go ahead.
I think you will be surprised about number 1, but number 3 is Varun Dua. Just mentioned him earlier, the original founder of CoverFox, and then moved on from a distributor insurtech to founding Echo as a licensed insurer. So yeah, really happy to have him on the show as well. What are your views on the Echo story?
So I think he had a really interesting perspective during this conversation. I loved this quote: before malls could happen, there was e-commerce. So they're trying to make this, trying to put forth this concept that there's a leapfrogging going on in some places, right? In other words, you had to have the technology out there first, before then you could back up and build the offline stuff. And I think this was part of the point that he was trying to make. But again, a really interesting and super insightful speaker. And we should have them on too again, yeah?
Yeah, no, definitely. Great conversation. Okay, let's have a look at number 2. Saurabh Bhandari from Discovery.
Wow, that was number 2.
Yeah.
That's great. Look, I want the t-shirt. I don't understand why we haven't gotten a t-shirt.
Good point. And let me point out again, this is always based on the stats from the first week after release. So some of the podcast episodes have returning listeners, so sure, that statistic looks a bit different. And maybe for our 200th anniversary, we could also have a quick look at what have been the most popular podcast since we started. That could also be interesting one after close to 4 years now, isn't it?
It really is. And look, I get the sense that we've seen so much change in the industry, not just in the insurtech space, but in the incumbent insurance space as well. I remember this back in April. The world was a completely different place back then. again, I like to follow up with people. I don't want to keep mentioning it, but April of 2022, very, very different world than it is in December of 2022. And yeah, this was a really, really cool conversation. Number 2. Wow. Go ahead. I can't even begin to think about what number 1 is.
Really excited about number 1 because what have we been missing so far?
Okay, go ahead. Show me.
We're missing a bit of diversity here, aren't we? So that is what makes me really excited about our number 1, which is Shania Ghosh from Edelweiss General Insurance.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, actually. And I'm so happy about this. When was this again? This was really early on. But the thing is,
in January.
What a lot of people don't see is all the hard work that the Asia InsurTech Podcast team does in the background, all the organization, all of the back end processing, right? All of the things that happen. And, just being able to get her on the show was kind of amazing. And she's had an incredible career across the board. And if you listen to this episode, what's the right way to say this? She's so deliberate, but so into this as well. She's very convinced that she knows the right direction in which to point it, and also super focused on building the right team. This was a super, super episode and a great conversation. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. Number 1. That's awesome. And no, surprising really, really because it was long ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I was also, quite surprised. But then, again, quite happy. I think last year we also only had, one woman in the top 10, and that was Rupa.
Oh, right.
And really, really happy that, this year we actually have a woman as the number 1 podcast episode. And, that's really, really, really great.
That is super amazing. Do you want to give a little bit of your own, what's the right word? Just summary, of the past year.
Yeah, I mean, it was personally, I moved to Sydney, and at the end of 2021. So for me, it was a new year, experience the market here in Australia a bit closer, which was quite exciting, and then still being very connected to Asia, Southeast Asia through the podcast, and we have speakers from Australia on show as well, but predominantly we have speakers from Southeast Asia and India, so really, really happy to still have this connection. And it was also really exciting, Michael. We saw each other for the first time since the pandemic in Singapore when we were at ITC Asia. So that was great. And it was also great to see, these in-person conferences coming back.
Yes.
Well, we know this firsthand. You can do all of these things, virtually, right? But there is just something about meeting people in person. And, in Singapore at ITC Asia, we really had the chance to meet, a lot of our guests, the, people we had on the show over the past, close to 200 episodes, to meet them for the first time in person. Which was amazing. And that was probably my favorite part of 2022.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And just to reiterate, I think one of the things that we try to do that's different is we try to focus on the people to whom we're speaking and not just the businesses that they run. We talk about this a lot. It's who you are in the context of what you do. And I think this is what makes the Asia InsurTech podcast so compelling, is that people get to know the people into the businesses in which they work. And that makes it really cool. And you're right. I was thinking the same thing. The ITC event for me was transformational, right? Because I'd never been to one. We should go to the one in Vegas as well. But this idea of meeting all the people to whom we've been speaking forever, I'll share one really quick story with you. That I met this one particular person who definitely feels like they'd met me before face to face. And I'd only spoken to them on the podcast, but I think because they listened and because they'd been on the show, they felt like they'd met us. And that's the thing we're trying to do, is create this connectivity between the people that run and build these businesses and the people that are interested in learning more about them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's we made a lot of really great and meaningful connections, with the industry, and happy. Also, a lot of people put a lot of trust in us, right? So, and we don't talk about this. We have the news roundup where we talk about the news, but there we really focus on the news that are published. But really, really great to see companies, having the confidence in us, coming, sharing, next new things before they're even public. And really grateful for this trust and for this community we have built over the past years.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's been on the show, who participates in the show, and who supports the show for making 2022 so great. And I'm looking forward to a super amazing 2023. And thank you as well. None of this would be possible without you.
Oh, that's right, awesome, back Theresa. At you. And I think what's left to say is happy new year. We are really looking forward to 2023. On a personal note, I will actually be relocating to New York in January.
Wow!
So really excited to explore another market and get involved. But obviously we will continue working with the Asia InsurTech podcast and bringing Asia's success story to the world. And that's really what we are doing, because if we have a look at the countries where we have listeners, the US is one of our biggest markets, right, even though we focus on Asia Pacific. But that shows how interesting these markets are. And you said something earlier, right, about leapfrogging. And I think that is something we are seeing a lot of in Asia, right? And especially in like developing Asia. And I firmly believe that the world and also the mature markets can learn a lot or get a lot of inspiration from what is happening in Asia and InsurTech.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.